Do y'all remember Fran Bow? I do. I remember watching Jacksepticeye play this game when he first released the series 9 years ago. Now, after having forgotten everything about it, I thought that it was about time I played it for myself. And rest assured, it was just as weird as you remember. The game opens with Fran's life getting fresh princed.
My life got flipped, turned upside down.
When Vince offer comes and slap chops her family into a million tiny pieces.
Home fries in a sec.
Fran, being a natural-born criminal, instinctively flees the scene of the crime, getting lost in the woods, where she is found by Jacob Fry and taken somewhere. Where, you ask? Well, we'll never know, because after counting down 3, we're introduced to Dr. Sigmund Freud, the youth asylum psychologist. He's performing some kind of treatment on Fran, which results in her feeling, and I quote, like dying. After some more depressing-ass conversation, Freud gives Fran a present from her Aunt Grace. A purse with a letter in it. The letter gives some very subtle hints about how to use the items in your inventory. Freud tells Fran that her aunt is worried about her, and Fran says that she too is worried about herself because, like all the sane people say, she's not crazy. Freud shits all over that idea, telling Fran that she's out of control. Fran says fuck this and tries to leave, but before she can, she's given some pills to take. And take she does. Fran pops a molly and trips hella balls, seeing the same 2 copy and pasted heads fall from the sky along with other miscellaneous body parts. Also, a super spoopy ghost whistles at her while sliding its opacity up and down for dramatic effect. Fran, being Fran, faints at the sight of this alpha energy, and Freud tells the nurse to keep Fran off the perks and get her back to her room, because who needs a hospital anyway? Vince Offer then appears to Fran during a drug-fueled fever dream where he hits her with the "I'll chase you to the end of the earth" if she ever leaves the House of Madness. Throughout this game, you're going to see that Mr. Vince here is the Shakespeare of cringe, always coming up with new words and phrases to make himself sound, for a lack of a better term, cringe. Fran's cat, Midnight Shyamalan, also appears, telling Fran that drugs are cool and that she has to do them in order to escape and find him in the forest. Fran awakens, curled up in bed like the little piss baby that she is, hungover as shit, and surprised that she has been magically teleported out of the, might I remind you, mental asylum. Also, somehow there are sticky notes on the wall with details about the dream that she quite literally just woke up from. Fran, being the clumsy kleptomaniac that she is, breaks the curtain and then immediately grabs the hook that falls off of it, despite not having a clear use for it yet. Or hell, even a potential one. This will happen a lot throughout the story, and although I, as the player, know why I'm grabbing these objects, it's never quite addressed how Fran knows which objects to grab. So I guess we'll chalk it up to Fran being psychic. Or insane. Continuing on with the story, she looks out of a window to see that she's being kept in Fort Knox. Why these kids are being kept in a maximum security facility, the world may never know. Fran then goes to the nurse's station and searches the place top to bottom, like the little FBI agent she is. The nurse doesn't even look up to see what Fran's doing. She's just too busy writing America's next bestseller, I guess. Fran speaks to the nurse and finds out that she's been sleeping for 3 fucking days. That's not sleeping, that's a fucking coma. Anyway, Fran then tells the nurse that she did something in the most vague way possible. The nurse then berates Fran, which we can all agree that she deserved, the fact that she's, Fran. She then goes to the other side of the room, past a divider, where she immediately steals a box from the boy whose room it is, in front of him. She opens it, revealing a key. And then, from across the room, identifies that the key doesn't fit into the door. Once again, the only explanation? Psychic or insane. Also in this room, we learn that Dr. Sigma's name is actually Marcel. This isn't relevant to the story, I just wanted to see if you're still paying attention. Fran then takes the box key from Fillmore's room back to her room where it unlocks her nightstand drawer. Why Fillmore has a key to Fran's nightstand? Well, it's simple actually. He's a creep, a fucking weirdo. Fran gets her family photo and a bobby pin with a little decoration on it. Now you might be thinking, how did Fran get a bobby pin in a maximum security asylum? And to that I would say, I don't fucking know, go ask a dev or something. Fran then tries the Deus Ex Machina pin on the door, but needs one other thing. In case you're wondering, I tried the hook already, but it didn't work. Fran finally fesses up to breaking the curtains, and the nurse, rightfully so, doesn't believe that it was an accident and tells her to follow her while she goes to fix it. When the nurse gets to the curtain, she realizes that the hook is missing and asks Fran where it is. Fran, of course, lies, saying that she knows nothing of it, and the nurse leaves to go get a new one. This allows Fran to snoop through the nurse's desk, where she finds a lockbox, a note with a hint to solve the lockbox code, a basic childhood psych book, tea, and band-aids. All of which Fran grabs. Oh yeah, and a loaded fucking gun. Fran, in her first intelligent move of the game, puts the gun back as it was and then leaves it alone. Fran then asks Phil if he knows any way out of the asylum, and he's like, fuck yeah I do. There are many ways out, dummy. Fran's like, but everything's locked. And he's like, so get the office key, stupid. Fran's like, the office? That's a TV show. Multiple, actually. Feels like, not the shows, dumbass. I saw that Dr. Ho write a code in his office, bonehead. Friends like, the code to the yellow door? Feels like, I said too much already. If I tell you anymore, then I'm gonna have to start informing people that I'm not suicidal. Fran gains half a brain cell for a moment, asking the real question. Who? Phil goes full I see dead people and points behind Fran, telling her, him. Vince Offer once again appears, being all cringe and shit, talking about how all the doors are locked and that she is a prisoner of his games and how no one will help her escape. Sir, that's a minor. He's less Vince Offer, more Jeffrey Epstein. Unfortunately, he leaves without subjecting her to any more cringe. Fran then unlocks the lockbox, grabbing the pills inside. She pops some MDMA in the nurse's office, where there is now a dead nurse in a wheelchair who she grabs a knitting needle from. Remember that nurse? I promise she'll be relevant towards the end of the game. Also, in her room, there is a passageway where her bed used to be. Upon going down the passageway, we see a conversation between Dr. Sigma Freud and Mrs. Smegma Grace. She wants to tell Fran something, but Dr. Sigma says no. Grace is then like, well, let me take her home then. And he's like, no. She then hits him with the, but she's special though. And he hits her with the, bitch, I've heard that so many times and it's never said in a way that is true. The screen then goes black and Fran appears on the floor, but now her bed is blocking the passage under it. Also, there's a dead fox for some reason. After combining the Deus Ex Machina pin and the Casper knitting needle, she gets a lockpick which she uses on the door to go into the hallway. In the hallway, we get our very first glimpse of knockoff Papyrus, who rippled Elise to the floor. After entering the bathroom and reading that the king likes drawings, Fran heads out and sees a Clockwork Robo Midnight Shyamalan, her cat, run through the hall talking about hugging and finding him or something. Fran turns off ray vision and tries to go down the stairway, but is blocked by the nurse who is moonlighting as Snorlax. The nurse asks how Fran got out since the door was locked. Fran, being the gamer that she is, tries a charisma check but fails, getting sent back to her room to wait for the doctor. Fortunately, there's no waiting to be done, as Fran is greeted by Freud as soon as she goes past the divider. Freud is the verbal equivalent of a finger wag, and Fran this time passes her charisma check, allowing her to now freely explore the hospital. Back in the hallway, Fran enters the other room where we see a girl on the floor drawing with crayons. We'll call her Crayola. Crayola immediately breaks about 123 rules of engagement by jumping to asking Fran the deep questions like if she sees them too and why more people don't know that the middle of homeowners meow. Anyway, the now traumatized Fran says that she does see them too and asks what the shadows are, but Crayola changes the subject, asking Fran if she likes to draw. Fran is like, hell yeah brother, but the shadows though. Crayola continues, saying she is looking for a crayon despite already having a bunch on the floor next to her. Fran, trying to relate, says she's looking for her cat, and Crayola tells Fran that the shadows took her cat. Fran asks who told her that, and Crayola says that the shadow that follows her is the snitch. Then she ejects from the conversation. Going downstairs, Fran sees a yellow door on the other side of a fence with an alarm blinking next to it. There's also a picture of a man called Sir Oswald Harrison. Remember him? He'll be relevant later. In the room next to that, there's a creepy guy guarding the keys. We'll call him Paul Blart. Fran asks Mr. Blart for the key because, of course she does. He offers in exchange the keys for a kiss. After a moment of consideration, she decides not to get the game banned and instead finds another way. In the next room is a girl just standing there menacingly. Fran asks if she's okay, and the girl gets offended. Then she says that the doctor will cut Fran's head open if she doesn't leave because he likes to eat brains like he did hers. Thankfully for Fran, she doesn't have a brain to eat. Brainless Fran wishes the girl luck on finding new thoughts and then gets out of there. Sufficiently scared shitless, Fran continues on her way to the cafeteria, stopping along the way to confess her visions of dead animals to a nurse and slightly more impressively to kill Jason Voorhees before going to the cafeteria to look at some milk and then back in the lounge to talk to a girl that we'll just call Anna. After some magician talk, she does a drug deal with Anna to get a sleeping pill. She then moves to the cafeteria where she tries to jack a cripple's cane. He obviously stops her, telling Fran not to touch his sword. Fran's lying ass tells him that she didn't know, whatever that's supposed to mean, and the boy, on his tripping bullshit, believes he is the king and tells Fran that as such she should bend the knee to him. Fran tries to break the boy out of his delusions but buckles at the slightest resistance, bowing to him and then asking for his cane. The king corrects her because it is in fact a sword and not a cane, then gives her a trade offer of one sword in exchange for a castle and horse. Fran, having no idea what market value is, accepts the offer. Fran then heads back into the weird girl hallway, then into the room on the right. In the room is a girl who I'm almost positive is dead, and a kid who I'm going to call Sid. Sid's on his conspiracy arc and says that the paper isn't working and that he needs the paper to show him what's on the TV. Fran, with a brain the size of a stegosaurus, agrees to help him by changing the television station so that he can see what's on the paper. Station 8 is the right one, and as a reward, Fran is granted a piece of paper. How exciting! On her way out, Fran grabs a tie off a bathrobe as well. Fran then heads back up to Crayola's room and tries to yoink a crayon, but is stopped. Fran then asks for the green crayon, but is told no, as then Crayola won't be able to draw green. After some more haggling, a deal is struck, where in exchange for bandaging Crayola's wounds, Fran gets the crayon she desires, which she then uses to draw the king a picture of a horse and castle. Fran then goes to the cafeteria and gives him the drawing, claiming her prize of the cane. She then combines the tie with the hook and the hook with the cane to form the Grabomatic 2000, the worst tool in Inspector Gadget's arsenal. Fran tries to use it to get the key, but it gets stolen by Paul instead. Fran goes full assassin on him and tries to grab a biscuit, putting the sleeping pill on it, but he doesn't take it, leaving Fran to pivot to plan B after overhearing the nurses talk about bringing him his coffee. Fran takes the coffee and spills it on him, getting him to abandon his post, allowing her to grab the key and enter the locked office. In the therapist's office, she grabs another key off the wall and a note with a code off the bulletin board. Phil then appears and roasts the shit out of her before locking her in the room. Fran, in a stressed daze, pops an Adderall. Now in Rave Vision, a vent opens and she goes through it, falling into the laundry room. After waking up, Fran goes up the stairs and uses the key from the office to open the door. Vince's offer once again appears to Fran, giving her words of discouragement. This causes Fran to faint like the little pansy bitch boy she is. While passed out, she sees a vision of her cat entering a maze and saying, "At the end of the maze." This is the second time now that a maze has been mentioned by her cat, so in case it wasn't clear yet, we gotta go to a maze. Fran, to my dismay, wakes up yet again and goes through the unlocked door which leads to reception. In reception, she overhears the nurse talking about her to somebody. Who, you ask? I don't know. You really gotta stop asking these questions. As a matter of fact, who are you? How'd you get to my house? You have to leave. Moving past that, the receptionist says she hasn't seen Fran or the cellar key, but she'll let the person on the phone know if either turn up. Fran pops a Vicodin, which allows her to drop the key off undetected. The receptionist sees the key and goes to take it back to the person on the phone, leaving the reception empty. Fran enters the code from the doctor's office note into the alarm to disarm it, and then leaves through the yellow door. Paul Blart finally does his job as he stops Fran on her way out, but Vince, motherfucking Offer, yet again appears and treats Paul like the real Vince Offer treated that one prostitute. Vince attempts to do the same to Fran, but is stopped when Earth's mightiest hero, Robo Midnight, slowly unicycles out of the door. Alcatraz's alarms sound as Fran follows Robo Midnight into the maze. After getting to the end of the maze, Fran fights off the shadow hose to follow Robo Midnight through a drain, losing her family photo in the process. Fran emerges on the other side of the storm drain and goes into the rave realm. There she sees a tree of grandpas, patent pending.
Technically in the game they're called Luciferns, but like, they're grandpas.
And attempts to grab the key, but is stopped by one of the grandpas, who's infuriated with curiosity. Fran, being curious, asks why they won't let her have the key, and they give her the Reddit philosopher answer, because they're cool like that. Fran has no time for the bullshit and says she wants the key, but they say it's not theirs to give, so better luck next time. She begs, and in response they roast the shit out of her, which gains the respect of Fran, oddly, who gives them her whole life story. Because obviously that's what you do. She asks for the key again, and gets hit with the, listen, I would if I could, but I can't. Unless, of course, you find that little rat bastard who took our comb so you could free us. Fran, never the glutton for punishment, says deal and sets off to find the raptor rat. Almost immediately after starting her quest, Fran is stopped by a big-ass ant and his pet beetle pig. Remember the ant? He'll be on the test. The ant is blind and narcoleptic, so the conversation is about as smooth as galloping Gertie. That one was for my bridge lovers out there. Speaking of Gertie, that's what we're going to call this ant until informed otherwise. Fran tells Gertie about the quest for her cat, and he says that he is sorry, but he fed her cat to his beetle pig, BP for short, but he does offer a solution to both their problems. Kill him. This way she can save her cat and he will have meat to eat. Fran's like Ben grabs an axe from a nearby stump, smashing open a well to practice her swing. She then tries the whole murder thing on BP, but he doesn't seem to like that idea very much, constantly running away. After using a feather to wake him up, Gertie suggests Fran get some berries from his house, more specifically the Pinecone's house inside his house, and use the berries to distract BP while she Hulk smashes him. That sounds kind of weird. Ignore that. Fran uses her massive muscles to break the door handle off the door to his house? Hill? Nest? What is this? Anyway, she grabs the handle on her way into the thing. Once inside, she grabs glue from the closet, which she combines with the door handle, for no apparent reason at this time, but we'll get to it later. She then grabs some meat from a rack, which she uses to lure bugs off a bag in the rave realm. She grabs the bag and loots it before she goes back to the sober world. Fran uses the mouse trap from the exterminator's bag to set a saw-style trap for the Pinecone family. She traps one of them, then she knocks over the baby, as she should, and grabs the berries, then leaves the ant's house. In the creek over by the ant hut, Fran in Rave Vision sees Robo Midnight Shyamalan fall into the blood creek and turn into real Midnight Shyamalan. He says that he's in danger and to find him in a golden cage. Midnight has very high standards for his own kidnapping. Fran then walks away, leaving Midnight to drown in the blood creek. Fran uses the berries to Axeman Beetle Pig, but there's one small problem. It was Charles' entertainment cheese in Beetle Pig's stomach, not her cat. Charles tells Fran that some no-clipping motherfucker took her cat, to which Fran follows up with the most logical response, "Can I have your hair comb, please?" Charles, like Sonic, is an Elva and responds with, "Fine, but brush me first, bitch." Fran does just that and then takes the comb back to the grandpas, brushing them too. In response to the first touch they felt in years, they turn into butterflies and fly away, allowing Fran to grab the key. Fran grabs a door from a junk pile, combining it with a door handle to form a door to nowhere. She places it on the well and goes through it, down a staircase, and gets attacked by whatever that is, causing her to pass out. Fran awakens doing some kinky shit, and her post-nut clarity hits, and she realized that maybe the whole cat thing was just a little too odd. She gets up and grabs a cauldron, a knife, baking soda, matches, a midnight rose seed, salt, the pepper will come later, and a vase. Fran then fills the cauldron with water before heading upstairs, where she grabs a broom, black candles, and tweezers. Then she goes up to the attic to reunite with Midnight Shyamalan. Midnight's in his psychic era and asks Fran if she felt his presence in her dreams. Fran says, yes, you told me to take my meds in my dream. Midnight is like, nope, I didn't say any of that shit, but I do think someone is trying to help get us back together. Fran heads back downstairs and is met by the Olsen twins. She is shocked someone lives there and they ask about the peculiar hat, calling it her head. Then they go full FBI on her, telling her her name, comment on the brutality of her parents' death, weird flex but alright, and allude to the fact that they know who killed them. What's their explanation for knowing this? She's Fran Bow, and much like Nardwuar, they simply have to know. They then hit Fran with some quick talk therapy. Then they change professions, going full Sherlock Holmes, commenting on the fact that Fran has said nothing about her cat, despite loving him more than anything in the world. Then, Vine Boom, they are like, we watch you find a bitch.
The streets are always watching, and we are the street.
After that incredible display of alpha energy, they ask Fran if she wants her cat back. She's like, obvi, and they're like, alright, tell us how you got here. Fran gives a recap and they're like, cool, how old are you? Fran, being the youngest, is the living embodiment of the short straw, giving anyone older than her the right to bully her. The Nardwuars take full advantage of this fact by telling Fran that she must now obey them. She's like, nah dog, I'm good. In response, they dunk on Fran for not asking their names and for wandering around their house without permission. They then call Fran a dumb orphan, which causes little weak dumb baby bitch boy orphan Fran to cry. They shut that shit down because much like your father who went to the store and is never coming back, they don't believe in emotions. And as a final incentive to get Fran to listen to them, they threaten Fran and her cat with some ungodly things. Fran's like, fine, I'll listen. And they ask her to do some casual witchcraft because it would kill them to do it themselves. They reveal their motivations by giving their backstory. Basically, a long time ago, something came down from somewhere and mangled their two separate bodies into one like some kind of fucked up magician. Anyway, the Nardwuars say that after they're separated, they're going to take their revenge and they leave to get the things for the ritual. Then, for some reason, they show her a key and ask her if she can even imagine what can be opened with it, calling her, of all things, considering the fact that they just made fun of her for being an orphan, silly. And then they leave. Somehow, despite walking to a room on the left, they have managed to lock the attic door, which is an entire floor up. That's not relevant to the game, I just thought that you should know the levels of bullshittery we're dealing with here. Anyway, Fran goes where the girls went, but instead of finding them, she sees a murder scene, and Obi-Wan Kenobi who don't know Walser. There are also some priceless Jantz records. This is not the last we'll see of Gertie, or, as the game calls him, Antonio. There's also a typewriter that will be useful later. For now though, Fran goes back to the kitchen, where knockoff Papyrus once again appears, opening the kitchen window for Fran and disappearing. Fran immediately hops out of the window because, as we all know, you should always follow creepy men. Out the window there's a toad and she talks to the toad because of course there are talking toads in this game. The toad tells Fran that she's in danger and that the island is a toad and cat magnet which traps them there, similar to how Epstein's island is a rich pedo magnet, although unlike toads and cats, nothing bad will happen to the rich people. Anyway, the toad reiterates not to trust the girls and Fran promises not to. The toad says that the dead girl in the room is someone who did the spell wrong and tells Fran to get creative and think of a way to save them all from the girl's fate. Fran grabs a board from the broken pier and goes inside to pop some good old-fashioned Flintstone gummies. Once in the rave realm, she uses the board to make a bridge to cut a rope to drop a bottle to get a recipe that is capable of killing the Nardwuars. This fucking game is just one long Rube Goldberg machine, I swear. Fran starts working on the ingredients for the new recipe. First, Fran finally finds the pepper, then she starts setting up what she already has. She uses the vase to draw a pentagram out of someone's grandma, then she places the black candles at the points of the star, lighting them. Then she lights the stove and puts the water-filled cauldron on it and puts the salt and pepper in it. Then Fran fucking stabs herself, putting her blood into the cauldron as well. Health and safety is gonna have to shut this restaurant down if the chef keeps this up. I'm looking at you, Fran. She then throws the seed into the moonlight's reflection on the water, causing a blue rose to spout. Using the force or some shit, Fran grabs the rose from a mile away and then puts it into the pot. Fran then uses the typewriter to forge an extra step on the original bad recipe so that the Nardwuars will willingly give her their hair. In the kitchen, Fran meets the Nardwuars who give her a bag of ingredients and leave the room. The toad hops up onto the windowsill and takes the bag, telling Fran that she won't be needing it. Fran then goes to the Nardwuars, showing them the forged recipe, and they give her their hair. She then adds the hair to the cauldron and calls the Nardwuars in to start the ritual. Fran dumps the still scorching potion over them, which has little to no effect, despite the fact that McDonald's was sued for this very same thing, seemingly unjustly. Fran then walks around them in a circle and says the words to the good recipe. Partway through the ritual, the narwhals catch on, but it's too late, and they're turned to dust. I have no idea how these people, who have apparently been trying this for so long, didn't realize that those weren't the right words until it was too late. But to be honest with you, I'm tired, and I'm not going to try to figure it out either. Fran grabs the key from the remnants of their corpse, aka the pile of ashes that they left behind, and goes to free Midnight, but the key doesn't fit. Fran uses the key on the mirror's keyhole, and it reveals a small minigame where you have to connect the gears from start to stop. Fran does that shit in world record time, which causes the Talia and Melpomene mask to pop out, with the Melpomene mask screaming. That screaming causes the mirror's glass to break, revealing two hidden cubbies. One with some spooky scary skeletons, and one with two photos, a double-headed doll, Fran's pills but yellow, a key, and a letter. The letter fleshes out the narwhal's story some more, so pause to read, but for the rest of us, the only relevant part is that they blame a being called Itward for their fate. Fran grabs the key, saves Midnight Shyamalan, and gives the toad some baking soda to inflate him. The toad gives Fran her family photo and a random dude's journal. Fran thanks him for the stuff, then climbs onto him to get off the island with Midnight. The escape is shown through Claymation Frogger, which is an odd game to choose considering how often the toad states that he is in fact a toad and not a frog. The toad is gamer and quickly completes Frogger, dropping Fran and Midnight off on a random shore. Midnight, being the only sane one there, asks, "What now?" Fran's like, "Well, obviously we go home, stupid." Realizing that at this point he's stuck with Fran, he says that he will do his best to help her. They make it all of 3 steps where Fran's whole being a bitch thing becomes an issue, as she is unable to make herself cross the damn bridge. Midnight goes first to flex on Fran, which gives her the confidence to go across the bridge. Unfortunately for Fran, being a bitch was the right move this time, as the true hero of the story, Mr. Vincent Offer himself, appears and recreates Galloping Gertie using the power of the crank chop.
Hi, it's Vince with Crank Chop.
How I've managed to fit 2 Galloping Gertie references into one video, the world may never know. Fran's eyes bleed for some reason as she hangs onto some roots for dear life. She tells Midnight that she is slipping, to which he tells her, "Jump to me then, idiot." She does just that, and he acts as though he could possibly hold her. Shockingly, the cat can't hold the human, and Fran falls. Now this is the part of the game where you have to suspend your disbelief, as the cat willingly follows her down to his death. The rest of the game was whatever, but there is no world in which you could convince a cat to like you, let alone jump to its fucking death with you. Moving past that bullshit, in Fran's final moments, she imagines being guided into bed by Coach Grace, who gives her a pep talk, and then being offered new medicine. I don't know how that last part related to the rest, but what I do know is that both Fran and Midnight died. The end. See you in the next one. Maybe if there was a god, that would be the end, but no such god exists. Instead, Fran becomes a fucking tree! I'm so fucking done with this game. Kill me now. Which one of the fucking writers wrote this shit? Who gave you the fucking audacity, trademark? And who the fuck okayed this storyline? I'm gonna Liam Neeson your ass. Whatever. Alright, after a small conversation between Midnight and Fig Bow, flying fucking boat vegetables come down and the boat carrot attacks Fran. That is a very real sentence I have just said. Aussyoto 2024. Being a carrot, he doesn't understand English, so Fran sends Midnight to get her purse, hoping that something in there will get the carrot to stop. Midnight uses a nearby crystal to jam the gears, allowing him to get the purse off a lily pad at the end of a bridge. He shows the carrot the family photo, and the carrot is like, "Oh shit, my bad," and takes Fran into the sky boat. Midnight hops in after Fran, and they fly off to a palace. At the palace, the carrot bows to a tree bro and says some stuff. The tree homie starts speaking English, and Fran gets hyped. We learn that the carrot's name is Ride. I don't know why, but I felt like that was important to tell you. Anyway, the tree homie is like, "How human tree, huh?" Fran's like, "Funny story." Tree homie is like, "No need for a story at all," and shoots some lights at Fran, resulting in her growing a fruit. Ride gives the fruit to the tree homie, who looks intently at it and finds out Fran's whole life story. Fran's like, "Whoa!" And base tree homie's like, "Shut up, bitch. I'm reading." He tells Fran that she isn't supposed to be there, and Fran's like, "I'm not trying to be here. It just kinda happened. Maybe you can help me." Leaf? But king. Tree homie on his king shit says they can't let her leave as it is too dangerous for them, and that Fran shouldn't have been aware of their existence. Fran, being an out-of-the-box thinker, asked if she is dead. Tree homie is not only on his king shit, but also on his Nietzsche shit, as he tells Fran that death is nothing more than the absence of love. Uh-oh, a cringe alert. Fran hits him with the, "I still feel love for my cat, so I can't be dead yet. Help me go home." Tree homie calls Midnight to him, and Midnight introduces himself, and Tree homie asks if Fran should go home. You'll never believe it, but Midnight says yes. He even throws an implore in there for good measure. Anyway, Tree homie reveals himself to quite literally be on his king shit, as he's the actual king of this world. Gold Digger Midnight flirts with the king, and Fran again asks King Tree homie for help to go home. After some more back and forth, he agrees. First, however, she needs to be able to understand and speak the language, so he gives her a fruit with the caveat that she won't be able to read. Midnight is like, "What about me?" And the King Tree homie gives a bullshit explanation. Then Fran needs needs limbs, so the king tree homie calls in a big-ass beetle to bring Fran up to a cliff for the doctor to come get her. Appa from Avatar is her doctor and scoops up Fran and brings her to a magic sky island hot spring. He drowns Fran for a second before she resurfaces. Appa reveals that the pink water is the purest water in the entire universe and that Fran has to wait for the water to purify the curse so that she can regain her arms and legs. While waiting for the water to do its thing, Appa lore dumps on Fran. In his exposition, he reveals that the pure water is the great Velasquez's blood. Fran should get tested after this adventure is over because there is no way that bathing in blood can be sanitary. Fran then counters his lore dump with one of her own, ending it by asking how she became a tree. Appa says that she basically liared herself into becoming a tree. He also says that her being there puts the land in danger as she has opened a doorway for bad creatures to come into the world, including Vince Offer himself, aka the Terrible Black, who wants to poison the second realm. He then gets flashbacks before saying some words that result in Tree Fran getting wrapped up in a weird vine cocoon. Fran emerges on her sad girl shit, then she hails Appa as the best doctor she has ever had, roasting Sigma Freud in the process. Not cool, Fran. Appa understands that Chad's gotta stick together and stands up for Freud, saying that he was probably just following the rules before whisking Fran away. Remember what Appa said, it will be relevant later. He then drops off Fran and leaves. Fran heads back inside the palace to see King Tree and Midnight getting their freak on. Midnight likes Fran's new leaves because he's a dendrophile, and King Tree likes Fran's new look because he's a pedophile. They start talking about how Fran can get home, and King Tree says that the Great Wizard is the only one who can bring her body back and open the doorway to the human world using his magic stones. The King Tree tells Fran that the Great Wizard lives on Mount Vesuvius or whatever he calls it, but stops short of actually telling Fran the location for the sole purpose of being intentionally obtuse, instead making her do what is effectively a scavenger hunt. King Tree then hitches a ride on Appa, and Fran starts her journey to find the wizard. She starts by asking the guard just outside the palace door about the mountain, and learns that A, the mountain is only in wintertime, and B, you somehow go to winter instead of waiting for it. Unfortunately, that's the most we learn from the guard as he sends Fran to the clockmaker for further explanation. She makes a pit stop at a broken tree clock before heading to the market. At the market, Fran asks the clockmaker about the wizard, but the clockmaker is just that, a clockmaker. He knows about time and how to tell it, and that's about it. He says time is an infinitely layered reality. Remember that, it'll come up later. Fran's like, great, so how do I skip to winter then? And he tells her to use the big tree clock. And she's like, yeah, I tried that, but it's broken, so fix it. He's like, not for nothing, stupid, I need a gold coin. She's supposed to acquire said coinage, and he says, go play games with a snail. Fran plays tic-tac-toe with the snail, winning 4 times, earning more than enough gold coins to fix the clock. She gives the clockmaker the coin, and they head to go fix the clock. While fixing the clock, he says that it appears that it has been intentionally broken, most likely by the Kamalas, aka the Shadow Hoes, who work for Remor, aka the Terrible Black, aka Vince motherfucking Offer. Apparently Vince wants the stones, but since he can't come to the land himself, he uses the Kamalas to do his dirty work. According to the clockmaker though, the stones are meaningless to Vince, as he can't do anything with them. Anyway, with the clock fixed, Fran is now able to change the seasons at will, and the clockmaker gives her a remote control to do it from a distance. On her way to the mountain, she stops by the bar and fall, learning that she needs her own ticket to enter. That's not relevant now, but it will be in a bit. She then heads up to the wizard's cave on the mountain in winter. In the cave, Fran tries to talk to the wizard but gets ignored. This is our first time seeing the guy, but I already like him. Eventually he does reply, saying that it's good that Fran has so many questions. The conversation topic turns to the stones, but the wizard's old dementia-ridden ass forgot where they are. Fran suggests that she could help find them, but he's already moved on to bigger and better things. Or in this case, thing. How it is that children's birthday party magicians make the rabbit appear out of the hat. Fran says, fuck if I know, ask the magician. But his dementia kicks in and he thinks that Fran has just arrived. During this conversation loop, Fran starts by asking for the stones, which seems to get a better response than last time. He reveals that he's put a spell on them so that no one can find them, not even himself. Unless, of course, you can answer the 4 riddles whose associated items will return his memory of where 4 other items are, and with those 4 items, he can get the stones back. Fran asks for the riddles, but he's like, I'll do you one better, and draws a pentagram on the floor. Fran's like, that's great and all, but I still need the riddles. He's like, oh right, and gives her a piece of paper with the riddles written on it, saying that the answer is always one item and that the item has to be placed on its respective symbol. Also, there's a conversation in which Fran learns that she has to wait to be made human again, and that ritual will require her clothes, making the total number of items that we now need 5. I'm going to save everybody a lot of time by just summarizing these scavenger sections because they are incredibly boring and tedious. Answer number 1 is a match which Fran already has on her from the twins' house. Answer 2 is a lemon, which is acquired by cutting a hole in a lemon basket, then skipping to where the cricket brings a filled lemon basket with him to the bar and a lemon will fall out. Answer 3 is a fish, which is acquired by grabbing a broken fishing rod in summer, then paying the blacksmith to create a fishing hook and getting a line from a fabric salesperson and putting it all together, then fishing in a stream on the pathway outside the palace. Answer 4 is a feather, which is dropped by Appa, who makes a crash landing after fighting God knows what. Also along the way there's an event that happens that I should mention. The cutscene is of the shadows trying to tempt Fran by using her dead mom, but it doesn't work because the shadows are horrible actors. After collecting all the items, Fran goes to place them on the pentagram in the correct order, stopping along the way to pick this flower. The wizard gets hyped with all the items placed and awakens the mountain, who Fran can go talk to get the first item, the wizard's hat. Fran talks to the mountain, whose wife literally left him, causing him to need the wizard's hat to stop him from, Pompeying the shit. Fran, using the red flower we previously picked, goes on a little journey to convince her to come back. Fran is a master manipulator and does convince her, allowing her to get the hat. Fran gives the wizard his hat back and he moves on to the lemon, which allows us to get his book back from the library, with the wizard giving Fran a password to facilitate this. The library guard gives Fran a quick philosophy lesson before allowing Fran to head inside. Once inside, Fran skips to when the library is empty, then uses a book of the Ithersta numbers to enter the Fibonacci sequence into a box on a stump in the middle of the room. After doing so, the stump opens with a Jack-in-the-Box style pop-up of knockoff papyrus. Fran then uses the wall ladder to grab the book. Fran returns the book to the wizard and asks about the knockoff papyrus puppet in the music box, which we learn is of Itward, the same one mentioned in the twins' note. With that, we move on to the fish, which reveals that we need the wizard's shoes, which were given to some dancer. If you ask me, I think it was a little cruel that an animal with no legs or feet was chosen to symbolize the shoes, but hey, that was just me. Fran goes behind the bar during fall, which shrinks the wood pile enough for her to knock it over, revealing a small hole. She sends Midnight through it and he grabs a ticket from a sleeping patron and gives it to Fran. Fran then uses the ticket as a reference to forge her own ticket using the green crayon and the worn out exterminator ticket. Once inside, she skips to when the bar is closed and changes the rhythm on the auto piano, which causes the dancer to collapse from exhaustion, allowing Fran to get his shoes. On the way out of the bar, Fran asks about Antonio, aka Gertie, everyone's favorite Jantz playing amp. See, I told you he'd come back up. With the shoes returned, we move on to the final item, the feather. The wizard says to get his wand from the Great Velasquez statue, so Fran heads to the statue where a small minigame of passing the wand from hand to hand is played, before Fran finally gets the wand. Fran returns the wand to the wizard and asks for the stones. The wizard's like, nah, but I can put the stones on the lock of the door, whatever that means, and then you unlock it. Fran remembers that the king said that he would show her the door, but first she needs to bring her human body back. To do so, she needs her clothes back, so she goes to the boat, which took her to the mountain's Wife Island, but instead of stopping at the island, she continues left, which brings her back to the shore in which she was originally found. Midnight brags about his basic problem-solving ability, and Fran is still on about her missing pills. Drug addicts, am I right? She grabs her clothes and heads back to the wizard. Fran hands the wizard her clothes and he fucking sniffs them like a weirdo, then performs the most fucked up magic trick in the history of magic tricks. Also, more events happened during Fran's quest to get all the items. First, the creepy lady from Mama tries to get Fran, but it doesn't work. Second, where the us version of Fran tries to get the us version of Fran to literally jump off a bridge. Fran, being human again, goes to the throne room to see the king. This is where the last hallucination happens. After entering the throne room, she is met with a hallucination of her holding a knife in one hand and her cat in the other. The us version of Fran tries to get us Fran to kill Midnight, calling her a traitor and saying that killing is what they do to traitors. She then brings up Fran's mom and dad and then calls everyone around Fran a traitor, saying that she is the only one that Fran truly has. Then she shanks us Midnight and disappears. The king walks in as the hallucination ends with Fran sobbing, saying that the doctors are right and that she's crazy. But the king hits the TikTok comment section and disagrees with the obviously true thing, saying that Fran isn't crazy despite literally showing every symptom of being crazy. Occam will remember that, Mr. Tree Rex. The king then expresses his confusion over the fact that Fran isn't happy despite getting everything she wanted. Fran and Midnight exchange some words and embrace, with the king adding that if you love, you are alive. Ew, cringe emotion. After the pep talk, Fran seems to have regained confidence in herself and they move on to getting her back home. At the palace entrance, there's a staircase that leads to nowhere, and this is where the door is built. The king does some hoodoo your voodoo, making the door appear out of thin air. Then the wizard also appears and places the stones in the door. Fran makes a little pentagram on the door, causing it to turn into a portal, and the king hands Fran a box. Fran says her goodbyes and heads through the portal into the secret woods. In case you're wondering, the secret woods is just a 2D side-scroller platforming minigame where you run away from a troll until you make it to a door at the other end. Fran and Midnight emerge from a floating door on the other side of the bridge that Vince collapsed. To the left of the screen is where the most obvious trap I've ever seen is, but somehow Fran doesn't pick up on it. Instead, she repeatedly tries to pick up her pill bottle, which keeps getting pulled away. Eventually, Fran gets caught in a net trap, which she cuts her way out of. After falling to the ground, Knockoff Papyrus peeks over the hedge, saying that he wasn't expecting Fran until 2:35. Then he introduces himself as Itward, Fran's faithful friend. Somebody needs to put this man on a watch list, because that is not a normal thing to say to a 10-year-old. Anyway, Fran says what most people would probably be thinking in this situation. Do I know you from somewhere? Itward says that she does, but instead of mentioning any of the times we have seen him throughout the game, he says that, quote, I'm the creature of the night. We've been playing together. Seriously. Kill Monday Games. How in the fuckiest of fucks did this writing get into the final game without anyone stopping to think, Itward kind of sounds like a predator here. Maybe we should change that. Anyway, he also says he was the one helping Fran and Midnight get back together. Fran understandably throws some sass the definitely not a predator's way, and then Fran somehow acquires a brain cell and says, aren't you the guy that the twins blamed for everything that happened to them? Mr. I'm definitely not a predator responds with saying, no. You see, I didn't do it. They only thought I did it. In reality, reality, it was actually their fault. Fran once again comes in clutch with that nitrous boosted brain cell, asking what the fuck that means. His response? Their parents didn't love them. Anyway, as I was saying, this character might be the most, shall we say, odd character that has ever been written in the history of gaming. He is actually the embodiment of gaslight, gatekeep, and girl boss. He then tells Fran that, quote, he always came by at night and told her stories when she was just a baby. Itward, buddy. Listen, I'm gonna need your MC over there, cause this ain't it, chief. When the game opened with a content warning involving sexual harassment, I didn't think it meant Fran getting sexually harassed by a fucking skeleton. Anyway, things get a bit, I would say better, but he tells Fran that he, quote, came to her after she imagined him. Not helping your case, Itward, but also that he isn't imaginary. Rather, through a complex series of bullshit, she instead imagined him because he is real. Instead of elaborating, he decides it is best to just move on to how he's here to take Fran home. Fran's nitrous boosted brain cell has added a little amphetamines into the mix as she once again stumbles into the right response. I don't fucking know you. Unfortunately for Fran, nitrous is known to ruin cars, and it works just the same on brain cells. Fran immediately caves with the slightest, shittiest pushback. Fran, listen, the free candy is not worth it. Do not, under any circumstances, get into any weird vehicles with any weird men.
Fran gets into the weird vehicle with the weird man.
Fuck me, man. This game, I can't. Anyway, I got a bit ahead of myself. Let's rewind to how Fran ended up in this situation. After Fran agrees to go with Jared from Subway's living skeleton, he immediately tells her he, quote, has something to show her. Thankfully, as a skeleton, he doesn't have a dick to show. Instead, he shows Fran his flying machine. Of course, Fran loves the fact that it has so many buttons to push, and he tells her that he is going to use it to get her home. But they can't fly yet, as he has some shit to do first, and besides, it's not 2:35 yet. Fran's like, what the fuck are you on about with this 2:35 bullshit? I'm starting to think that he might be a little bit untrustworthy. Okay, she didn't say that last part, but like one man's dream, you know? Galito the Pedo says that 2:35 is when time slows down so they can enter the fucking ultra reality, and that from the ultra reality they can travel anywhere. And that Fran and him are in the endless limits of the second reality, but that she is from the third reality. He asks Fran if she understands, and Fran is Fran. Obviously she understands. As a good crewmate, Fran immediately asks what she's meant to do, and he gives her a quest of getting water and fire berries. Fran asks 0 questions and just says okay. He gives Fran a homemade water collection bucket because Galito the Pedo is a big arts and crafts guy, you know? And he tells Fran that she'll know the fire berries when she sees them. Fran seems to have brought her mind into the mechanic after the nitrous blowout, as it is once again working. She asks why it is that he needs this stuff. Galito the Pedo says that the berries are what his machine runs off and that water is for the shadows. He then gives Fran her medicine, telling her she'll need it. Fran, please for the love of God, do not take anything Galito the Pedo gives you. Fran immediately takes the pills. 0 hesitation, full send, shift W. Fran, I've given up on you. Do what you want. Anyway, Fran goes off in search of the things that she requires, stopping at a dead moose. The moose carcass stops Fran, telling her to fuck off because this is his land. Fran's like, shit, my bad, bro. I thought you were dead. Bro's like, are you dumb, bitch? Fran's like, well, you're, dead. So the not so dead moose tells Fran that she must be misunderstanding the situation. Fran's like, I think not, Mr. Moose. The voice tells Fran that he's not a moose, but rather a deadly worm. Fran mishears him as a deadly worm, to which he clarifies that he doesn't kill things, but rather reclaims the dead things, returning them to the soil from which they came. Fran's like, I only see a moose though, and things once again get weirder as a Grim Reaper worm emerges from the carcass. We'll call him Lil Revive because why not? Fran introduces herself to Lil Revive, who asks her why it is that she touched the moose, considering the whole it's a rotting dead animal thing. He then tells Fran that only scavengers do that and asks Fran if she's a scavenger. She's like, nah homie, I just need to climb up there to get those there berries. Lil Revive says, okay, considering the moose is still so damn sturdy, but cautions her as the berries are on fire and she may hurt herself. Fran's like, yeah, I know, but I gotta get them. So he's like, alright, good luck with that, and then retreats back to his carcass. Fran hits a Little Revive with a curtsy on his way out, and then goes about her day. Fran makes her way back to the edge of the cliff, where she and Midnight first arrived. There she finds a Lucifern who is once again tangled in a tree, but this time he doesn't want help to get unstuck, as they are trying to grow their hair out. Fran asks if she can tie her bucket to the Lucifern's hair, and they're like, why do you want to do that, you fucking weirdo? Fran explains that she needs to get the water at the bottom of the cliff. The Lucifern is like, alright, I'll do you a solid, hook her up, and they throw the bucket over the cliff. Then force pull that shit back up. Fran's like, thanks, I gotta go home now. And then, I don't know what it is about these fucking Luciferns, but once again, they hit Fran with some Reddit philosophy. Fran's like, bro, what the fuck does that even mean? The Lucifern's like, bro, it means that you are your own home. I guess Fran will just freeze to death instead of finding shelter because, she is her own home and all that. Anyway, Fran grabs the water and goes back to the dead moose, climbing it and pouring the water on the berries to extinguish them. Then she grabs the berries and returns back to Galito the Pedo. Fran hands the water and berries to Galito the Pedo, and he responds by telling Fran that all the Luciferans are assholes if found in any other reality besides this one. He then says that the journey is about to begin, and with that, we are caught back up where Fran gets into the vehicle with Jared from Subway's skeleton. Itward jinxes the trip by telling her that there is a good chance of reaching the target in good condition. What the fuck? Itward? It weirdo asks Fran if she's excited, which would normally be an innocuous thing to say, but coming from him, it sounds just a little bit creepy. Fran's like, maybe I would if I understood the shit, and he's like, you'll understand soon. Once again, totally normal thing to say if you're not Itward. She's like, that sounds strange, brosive, and he tells her that time proceeds as it has to in order for you to be alive. Fran, back on that big brain shit, asks if he's saying that the answers will come when they come, and he's like, no, I'm saying the answers will come when you find them. Itward then takes advantage of the lack of child labor laws throughout the realities and sends Fran off with the water and berries to do a bunch of very dangerous tasks. Fran decides to explore first. As soon as she enters the room on the right, she pops her pills like a drug addict, causing her to see the twins at the table. Fran grabs a key from them and uses it to watch a play about the twins' story. The story goes like this. Two sisters, the twins, tried to, quote, steal each other's charm, whatever that means, but they couldn't decide if it was right for them to do. One was angry and one was sad, both due to being mad, as in insane. Itward would come around at night, creepy, and would teach them about duality because he was a friend and a link between darkness and light. The sisters understandably were like, who the fuck is this creepy man, and tried to kill him. Unfortunately, they killed each other somehow. I don't even know how the fuck you manage that. Now, as skeletons, they still hate and complain about one another, and Itward visits them one last time, telling them that he'll give them a chance, since the world has been so mean to them. This part is a little unclear, and he says that, quote, they sewed your bodies together to prove they could, but never elaborates who did it. Anyway, Itward then tells them that he will return them to the world just as they were, telling them that it's their last chance to understand the purpose in life, and that they will have until the day a black cat goes missing and the well's magic door is unlocked to do so. The end. Moving on from Muppets Take a Trip, Fran leaves the room with crippling depression and goes into the other door, which leads her to the engine room. Once again, she instinctively pops her pills. In the rave realm, she sees alternative reality Fran, who is just your average emo teenager, all depressed and shit, probably listening to Simple Plan, still trying to convince anyone who will listen of how revolutionary Perfect was. Anyway, she trauma dumps on Fran about how she forgot to give herself love, and how she forgot to understand Fran, and how she waited too long and her cereal got soggy. Fran is so afraid of that last part that she leaves the rave realm so she doesn't have to hear about that shit anymore. Then she starts to get to work on the engine. Fran starts with the water pump, opening the reservoir, putting the water in, and then quitting. Way to show some initiative, Fran. She moves on to the chem bench, where using the instructions she got from a poster on the wall, she puts some chemicals in some cups, lights a burner, turns some handles, puts some tubes in the aforementioned cups, and throws some berries in there for good measure. But uh-oh, spaghetti, she's missing some tubes. Whatever will she do? If you guessed Go Back to Simple Plan Fran, then you would be correct. There, she finds some tubes sitting on a table and a pipe, which she uses to finish the chemistry shit. Fran then goes back to the water pump and lights the boiler and turns the water on. But uh-oh, spaghetti. Part 2 Electric Boogaloo. The hose is damaged. Good thing Itward is used to taking children, as he's stocked up on duct tape, which Fran uses to repair the hose. With that all done, Itward comes into the engine room to see if Fran needs anything, despite knowing damn well that she just did it all herself. Fran tells him as much, saying, I did it myself, and now what? Bitch. Itward is like, are you scared of rabbits? Because I am, and there's one in a room. Will you help me get rid of it? Fran says it depends on the rabbit, and Itward describes a stuffed animal. Fran's like, that does sound spooky. Show it to me. Fran follows Itward into the locked room from earlier, and just as he describes, there's a terrifying beast sitting on a shelf. Fran's like, that's a toy, dumbass. It doesn't move. And Itward sends Fran to grab it. She ain't no baby bag bitch. It makes it look easy. And in response to getting his ego bruised, he fucking yoinks Midnight and locks Fran in the room. Now, there is a whole puzzle here, but it's boring as shit, so I'm just gonna show you this mecha rabbit eating a carrot. Also, because it will be relevant later, I'm going to show you this teapot thing on the roof. With that out of the way, Fran heads down the hatch from the roof and arrives in the Muppet Theater room, where all the lights have been turned off. She turns on the lights and, oh my god, it's a surprise party. Wow, how nice of Skeleto the pedo. Fran's like, bro, the fuck? I thought you were going to kill Midnight, you lying liar face. Itward's like, bro, I'm sorry, but I had to divert your attention to shit. Midnight chips in, saying, we wanted to surprise you. Now make like Marie Antoinette and eat some cake. Fran, always the pushover, immediately gives up on the whole you lied to me thing and says thank you for the surprise and walks over to the table. Itward tells Fran that the cake's made of all her favorite ingredients. This means that canonically, at minimum, some of Fran's favorite ingredients are flour, sugar, butter, and baking soda. All of this to say, Fran is a fucking weirdo who eats raw sticks of butter. Itward then tells Fran that we have something very special for you. Itward, who the fuck is we? Well, I'm very glad that you asked. It's actually quite obvious when you think about it. It's all of the natural born or handmade beings, of course. That explanation didn't help you at all, you say? Well, that's too bad, stupid. It's the best we're gonna get. Mr. Itwood Touch a Kid hands Fran the single most suspiciously wrapped gift any of us have ever seen, and tells her that he hopes it will be educational, which once again, normal thing to say if it weren't coming from the living embodiment of Dr. Disrespect's career. Fran opens the gift and finds the creepiest cat doll in the world, but she seems to like it. Itward then tells her that it may open her eyes to new perceptions like the ultra reality. This makes Fran ask if she's been seeing the ultra reality whenever she pops a pilly and feels like a rock star. Itward tells her that she sees a mixture of realities and that the ultra reality is where everything everywhere all at once coexists. He then gives her an example to illustrate his point. Right now they are just having a birthday party, but other things could be happening right where they are, but just invisible to the human eye. I'm telling you this as it will be relevant later. Itward then tells Fran to blow out her candles as they're almost at their destination. When Fran does, the whole ship lights up red and some Godzilla sounding motherfuckers start screaming in the back. In response to this, Itward runs off. Fran then asks Midnight, of all people, what's happening, as if the fucking cat knows about Godzilla stubbing his toe. Then that dumb bitch Midnight jinxes them by saying that he hopes the ship doesn't break apart. Half of the game's problems would be solved by characters just watching like a movie. Just one would do. Regardless of their now doomed fate, Itward comes back, telling Fran that she has to help while he drives because the shadow bitches are back and they're attacking the ship. He also tells her that there is one left and that Fran has to Dalek it out of existence. Fran asks how to get rid of it, and Itward tells her to use the water. And remember, it may be hiding from her eyes. Fran pops a pill and finds it in the engine room. Small problem though, Fran has no water, so she has to run up to the roof and use the aforementioned teapot to fill the bucket and then go back down to the shadow thing and ALS ice bucket challenge that bitch out of the room. The shadow thing runs away and Fran has to find it once again. Conveniently for Fran, she finds it in the only place of the ship that has water, the roof. Fran used the teapot to spray the shadow thing 3 separate times because the rule of threes, and then on the 3rd time the shadow bitch runs away and Fran heads back to Itward to tell him the good news. Unfortunately for Fran, Itward doesn't have any good news of his own, as he says, respectfully, I hope you like dirt, because you're about to eat a lot of it. They all embrace as they're going down, and then cut to black. Through a small animation, we are shown that the ship crashed. Who would have thought? And then we cut to Itward telling Fran a story, all snuggled up on the bed. I have Chris Hansen on the other line, and he says no to everything I'm seeing. It wasn't God's name aside. Fran doesn't like the story the skeleton is telling, so Itward's like, fine, you brat. This is the story of Franchman Boakland, and more importantly, me. Back to the game world, Fran is lying in an oddly uncrash-like sight. Seriously, there's like no wreckage at all, just an old bike. You know what, guys? I'm starting to think Fran might actually be crazy. Midnight says they're just outside of town and that they should go home, but Fran gets vulnerable for a minute, saying that she misses Itward, as if they weren't together less than a second ago. And that's more time than he should have spent with any child since he got the order. Midnight's guide to grief calls for Fran to take drugs. Unfortunately for the young drug-addled Fran, her cup doth itself be parched, or in this case, her pill bottle doth be transparent. Fran agrees that they should go home in hopes that Itward would come visit her one day. Why anyone would wish for that, I do not know. Now, let's speedrun this part since almost nothing happens here despite it taking so goddamn long. Fran's like, oh my god, Midnight, we're home. Why she is surprised despite having lived here before and thus clearly knowing the area, and also having been told before by Midnight that they landed by the house, I don't know. Ask a dev, not me, not my problem. Fran looks for a key but instead finds a note from herself. Dun dun dun. She's like, but I didn't write that note. And then she sends Midnight into the house through an open window to open the door from the inside. But what happens next? Dr. Sigma Freud turned Dr. Dolittle shows up and is like, oh my god, Fran, you're alive. Fran's like, yeah, I'm just waiting for my cat to open the door. He's like, you're missing cat? Which I gotta say, given the situation, feels like the wrong question to ask, but that's just me, you know? Fran's like, yeah, anyway, why are you here? Doodle says that he's got to tell Grace something important. Fran's like, sorry, she's not home. Can I take a message on her behalf? Doolittle says, that's fine. I'll just have to take you then. Dun dun dun, the sequel. Fran's like, whoa there, mister. I've been taken by enough odd men who spend too much time with little girls into enough mysterious vehicles driven by said odd men. I'd rather not do this again. Also, I gotta wait for my cat to open the door. It's a whole thing, you know? Doolittle's like, friend, you can be honest with me. Are you on the weed? Because there's no way your cat is in that goddamn house right now. Friend's like, sir, I promise, I ain't done that much. Just wait, you'll see. Doolittle puts his foot down and kidnaps Fran. Oh boy, here we go again. In the car, he's like, listen, Fran, I'm not trying to hurt or scare you, just kidnap you. It's separate, it's the whole thing. This is more of like a business situation going on. Fran says, sick, but what about my cat though, dude? But I guess we'll never know because he changed changed the subject how he was fired from the asylum because he, quote unquote, knew too much. Look, I was joking before about the whole kidnapping thing because I thought he still had some like legal caretaker type thing over her. But no, this is just a good old-fashioned kidnapping. Just robbing a human. Just taking her. He gives Fran some documents that show that she's actually dead, but Fran's like, I'm not dead though, silly. Doolittle's like, I know, I can see that. Also, your meds were like double the healthy dosage of generic bad guy drug, so you might be like confused as hell. Fran decides that this is the right time to tell him that she, quote, can see the ultra reality and travel to other worlds. Fran, why? You had one job, which was don't look crazy. Like, look, sometimes it's not just okay to lie, it's actually encouraged. Doolittle rightfully tells Fran that it's all in her head, and Fran, the little, creative she is, says that if it's all in her head, she might be able to control it. For some reason, Fran switches back into Rayview and sees Doolittle as that thing, and he is saying some dark shit that I'ma just let you read so that I don't have to. Fran comes back from the wonky world and with no sense of decorum just straight up asks Doolittle about what the rave guy said. Dr. D's like, what narc told you that, dude? She's like, you did, dummy. Or didn't you? This implies that Fran sees no difference between normal Doolittle and the other Doolittle, who looks like a chimpanzee just ripped his face off. Doolittle's like, I didn't say a word about it. Fran then decides that now is the time to celebrate that she was right. He basically ignores what she said and moves on to trying to figure out who is behind all this. Jesus Christ, that's Doolittle bored. Fran is as Fran does and says, oh, that's an easy one. It's a big goat monster named Remor. He killed my parents and is hunting me. Fran then decides to tell him about Veggieland, the Flying Doctor, and the Great Wizard, because I guess he just didn't think that she was crazy enough. Doolittle gives the only correct response, brother. What? Fran keeps talking about weird stuff, and eventually she mentions the twins, which he says remind him of the Clara and Maya? One of the two, case. For those of you who are curious, those are the names of the twins, which confirms they were real and Fran isn't insane, and blah blah blah. He also confirms it word. The game's trying to convince you that she's not crazy, alright? But she is. Don't let the game gaslight you. Anyway. Fran's like, bro, you're really gonna send me back to the place after telling me all of that? Doolittle hits her with the asylums. We don't need asylums where we're going. And takes her to a graveyard. Just to recap the previous events. He has now kidnapped a little girl and brought her to a graveyard. What is with the men in this game? They do the creepiest things imaginable as if it's normal. Like, what writer wrote this and was like, yeah, this would never raise any red flags in anyone. This is a completely normal, healthy, insane event to occur. This happens all the time with very well-adjusted, reasonable individuals. Fran, unlike the writers of this game, questions why it is that he brought her to a cemetery. And he tells her, you'll see. Because I guess he just didn't think he was creepy enough yet. He just had to punch it up with a little extra mystery, you know? After hearing this, Fran goes straight to his car and grabs a crowbar, then follows Doolittle into the cemetery. Now, normally, I would make fun of Fran for stealing stuff, but in this case, she is 100% in the right. Good job, Fran. Doolittle tells Fran that this is her parents' resting place, and, dramatic pause, hers. Fran has now willingly walked into her own gravesite, which to be honest is the most Fran thing I've ever witnessed. Now here's the thing, this could have been a twist if literally 5 seconds ago on the ride here, we weren't told that Fran is dead, at least on paper. But this game keeps making severe and continuous lapse in its judgment, and unlike Logan Paul, it does expect to be forgiven. Then there's this whole spiel about finding her parents' killers and bringing them to justice. Fran's like, oh, what do you have in mind? And he tells her that they need to get evidence by looking in the casket. Hold on. You're telling me that this man who worked in a mental asylum filled to the brim with victims of awful things for so many years somehow doesn't know that by looking for the evidence himself, he would be tampering with it, and thus he would throw out whatever case he could build against her parents' killers. You know what? Sure. He says that they need shovels and sends Fran to the right to go look while he goes to the left. Despite looking like a Scooby-Doo villain, he has clearly never seen an episode of The Do, because splitting up like this is never a good idea. Now, there's this entire section with 2 kinky pine cones that I'm going to skip over because it literally results in nothing except for lifelong trauma, but I just felt like if I had to be cursed with the knowledge of this section, then so did you. Now, after that whole section, Doolittle's the one who comes back with the shovels because we needed to pad the time out as we get closer to the end, baby. Because, like, who wants story and actual progression, you know? You could get 2 kinky pine cones instead. They dig up the coffins, and Doolittle tells Fran that she can do the honors of opening the caskets. A reminder, 2 of them belong to her parents. Again, the men in this game, I, physically cannot. In her parents' coffins are their bodies, as is expected, but in Fran's coffin, there's a cat, who she posthumously names Albert. Doolittle's blind apparently, as he asks Fran if she could see any evidence, despite the fact that he is standing the same distance away from the coffins that Fran is. Fran's like, nah, but on an unrelated note, that's not my cat. He's like, but it could be though. And Fran's like, take me home and I will prove that my cat is still alive. He says okay and walks out, leaving an open grave with open caskets at the bottom of it. And knowing the world that this game is set in, nobody will question it. Fran follows him back to the car and that bitch, Vince Offord, appears, sliding the opacity down on Doolittle and says some Supremo 12-year-old edgelord stuff to Fran before pulling her to him and dropping her on the concrete. Fran at this point should have severe CTE. I mean, she clearly has something going on in there, you know? The cringe continues as we get an animatic of Vince talking to Fran, and once again, he talks about the goddamn House of Madness. You senile bonobo. Just say asylum, psych ward, mental hospital, loony bin, literally anything else but the House of Madness. It hasn't been 1843 in 182 years, you little rat. The English language has evolved. Please do so with it. My God, I hate this character. I wish him the worst in all things. Also, for some reason, the devs decided to call this chapter of the game House of Madness, just to twist the knife, I guess. That now puts them on my hit list, so you better keep those ears covered, boys.
That's an epic Donald Trump reference?
Fran wakes up shackled to the bed with Aunt Grace standing there. No, she's really not. Fran is excited to see Aunt Grace, but asks where her cat is. Grace tells Fran that he ran away after what he did. Fran's like, and what exactly would that be? Grace then, and I'm not making this up, tries to pin her parents' murder on the cat, saying that he is a traitor. Fran in anger says that it's not true, and the tinfoil backbone must run in the Fran Bow family, because as instead of sticking to her story and trying to convince Fran of what she's saying, she instead tells her that it doesn't matter if it's true, they need someone to blame. Grace, you off-brand wet noodle. You easily could have convinced her. She literally wants to believe you. God, I hate you, I hate this game, I hate your mom, I hate everything. I am become Simple Plan Fran, convincer of perfect. Also, I would like to make sure that you don't lose track of the fact that this whole conversation is and will continue to be about a cat. Fran sticks up for her hostage, I mean her friend, and says that they can't blame Midnight. Now is the time for the reveal that everyone saw coming. Grace says that it's easier to find someone to blame than it is to take responsibility. Look, I have no problems if you want to have a twist in your game. Even a cliche one that everyone saw coming. But at least put some kind of emphasis on it. Don't just drop it in the middle of a conversation and move on. It's lazy and bad writing, and I hate you. Fran asks why she changed the bed, and Grace tells her that it's because her hands do bad things when they're untied, which is a low-key hard-ass line. Fran's like, uncuff me, thine foul wench, I must find Midnight, and a better writer for this game. Then, in a game full of disjointed responses, we get one of the worst yet. Instead of responding to anything that Fran said, she decides to go full MC Grace and drop rap lyrics on Fran. Something about truth and evil, I don't know, man. I'm already on paragraph 184 of this script, and I still don't understand this game. MC Grace finally fucks all the way off, and Smooth Brain Fran still somehow doesn't understand why Grace is acting the way she is. Remember when I told you to remember what the clockmaker said? Well, this is why. Fran remembers the clockmaker said that time is a layered reality, and this gives her the idea to try and contact herself, but in another time. Fran then also remembers what Doolittle told her about everything being in her head, and by combining the two, she is able to slash TP at Fran Bow into other Fran's room. The other Fran doesn't even seem fazed by old Fran interrupting her game. She, oh hi Fran's Fran, then asked if she's a dog. Does she look like a dog? Actually, you know, I see it. Old Fran denies the fact that she is obviously a dog and asks young Fran if she can unlock the chains. After a quick talk about why they can see things that others can't, young Fran agrees to get the chains off old Fran. Listen, I know that this is a video game and so young Fran will somehow be able to get old Fran out of the shackles, but I just want it to be known that I think that this is lazy writing and is setting up the entire end of this game to just be a long daisy chain of Deus Ex Machina event. Also, here's a picture of Snorlax for no particular reason. Young Fran goes to her closet where she conveniently stores a box of keys. One of those keys just so happens to unlock Fran's 18th century shackles, because obviously, Fran thanks Fran, who gives Fran a note that has a hidden code in the text so Fran can open the box from the king tree. Catch all that? Good. Moving on, the nurse lady from the asylum takes Fran away, and old Fran is transported back to her bedroom. Fran gets up and goes to her closet, where she finds water balloons, her school case, and a button which you have to cut off a dress. We also get a reference to Alice in Wonderland. This isn't relevant to anything, I just wanted to point it out. Fran then opens the box the King Tree gave her and takes the cat key and ECOG clock instructions. She then goes over to the dollhouse, where she takes a piano clothespin and key from behind some wallpaper. Then she uses the cat key on the cat doll, which causes it to go supernova and form a door for Fran to leave through. I would like to take some time to point out how much our paradigm of what is acceptably weird has shifted. I just casually mentioned that a doll has went supernova and formed a doorway to leave a inescapable room, and none of us batted an eye. Even me reading that, I just read it normally, as if there was nothing strange happening. Shit's gotten weird, is my point. Alright. Anyway, outside the room, Fran is greeted with the creepiest of hellscapes. But luckily, there's a key left on a table in said hellscape. How nice of Hell's owners. Fran uses the table key to open the 105 door, and the wallpaper key to open the 104 door. Through 104, she is met with a room that for some reason reminds me of Blair Waldorf's room, except for the giant eye in the corner. Fran walks over to the eye, who is hell cheesed that she has entered his room without asking. He introduces himself as, I'ma just say Weeb. Weeb says he is the eye from beyond, and politely asks Fran to behold his beauty. Fran, at this point, unfazed by the creatures, just simply apologizes and says, what a big eye you are. You must see very well. I imagine she said that similar to how your aunt who is constantly pinching your cheeks despite the fact that you've only seen her like once a decade and definitely aren't that close does. He simply responds that he sees everything. Remember that, it'll be relevant very soon. Fran asks about a cat, and he says that he saw a cat in a cage in their lair. For future reference, I'm gonna just say Matryoshka, because although it looks like what he said should be easier to say, it's just not. Also, I feel bad for Midnight. Like, being friends with Fran is not worth the being friends with Fran part, let alone the constant kidnapping and people trying to murder you. In response to her cat's kidnapping, Fran's like, I gotta go Liam Neeson that hoe. And Weeb is like, that's dangerous. And Fran's like, I ain't afraid of no ghosts. Fran's bravery earns the respect of the all-seeing eye, as he tells Fran that she can take anything she needs from his home to aid her on her quest. Fran responds to the eye's kindness by ransacking his home, taking him for everything he's worth. She grabs a light bulb and a hairbrush. Then she pulls a rope to reveal a painting, which she crawls through Super Mario style, and behind the painting she grabs a glass bottle and a power cord, then leaves. Fran then goes back to Hell's foyer, where she goes through the 105 door, which leads to a hallway. Fran tries to grab a key from one of the skulls mounted on the wall, but is stopped by another as he doesn't think that's appropriate. Fran's like, too bad. I need the key to unlock doors, so tell your friend to be a good boy and open his mouth. Skull Kid says the skull won't, as his reinforced teeth are locked onto that key like... I don't have anything clever to say. I don't know. Like melted cheese on a grilled cheese sandwich. Got him. Fran leaves the conversation and enters the bathroom, where as the name suggests, there's a dude taking a bath. He asks Fran if the sound of his heart bothers her. Fran's like, brother, I just want the soap. No boundaries Andy over here asks Fran if she is having troubles with her hygiene. She's like, look man, I just want the soap. We don't gotta make this a whole thing. He tells Fran that that isn't a good enough reason to keep the soap, but Fran asks for the soap again, which for some reason convinces him this time. He must be a distant relative. Fran takes the soap and he leaves her with just one last warning, to be careful of hijackers, because they love children that smell like soap. Fran quickly fills up her water balloons and leaves to go to the machine. She plugs the machine back in and uses the button to get a pair of pliers. She then takes the wire back and uses the pliers to commit heinous war crimes on the skull with reinforced teeth to get his key. Then she heads back to her room and throws some water balloons on a shadow, which after 3 attempts causes him to firework,
Epic Katy Perry reference.
off. The tree that was being attacked rewards her with a branch. Fran then uses the key that she got from the skull to open door 102. Inside is a big ass cat with some bling around its neck, a golden lift, a lever, and a tree with a glove on it. Fran steals the bling, or as she calls it, the little wake-up clock, from the cat, then pulls the lever and goes across the bridge that is created with the cat's tail to grab the glove on the tree. She opens a hatch on the ass end of the cat and drops in all the random things she just picked up into it. The cat spits out a mechanical hairball, and Fran gleefully accepts the strange device that looks like a bomb, without considering the fact that it may actually be a bomb. She then goes up the Golden Sky elevator like her name is Charles, epic Charlie and the Chocolate Factory reference. The elevator takes Fran to the top of the glove tree, where there is a key dangling bodaciously behind a likewise bodacious flaming Lucifer. Fran tells the rare shiny Lucifer to move out of the way, but they respond the way that Fran should have responded to like half of the characters in this story. I'm looking at you, Itward. Fran's like, honestly, it's better if you don't talk, but I need that key, brother. The Lucifer channels their inner 3 wise monkeys and doesn't speak nor hear, although I'm pretty sure it does see. But hey, 2 out of the 3 is still a passing grade. Fran uses what she learned from her therapist to manipulate the Lucifer, whose hair is firmly grasping the tree. After some convincing, Fran is allowed to brush the Lucifer's hair, which gets it to Katy Perry off. Epic firework reference again, clearing the path to scoop the key and then head back down the elevator. Fran uses her new key to open the final door, number 301. Inside 301 is a bunch of edgified animals and trees, as well as an emo-fied version of the magic mirror guy from Shrek. Fran uses the bomb looking device to wake up the emo magic mirror. EMM wakes up on some cringe shit, and Fran is like, sorry to wake you, but I need a favor. EMM dunks on Fran, calling her, quote, quite insolent for such a tiny body. Neither Fran nor I properly understand that sentence enough to get the full effect of the burn. Fran introduces herself and EMM asks who brought her here. Fran tells her that it was none other than her son, done and done. EMM then asks if her son entered her head already, which just like, no. Fran's like, I don't think so. EMM then asks if she drank a red potion or ate any red beans, and Fran responds that she took an entire bottle of red beans. EMM tells Fran that for some contrived reason about 5 realms and a key, she can't use violence against her. She wishes Fran well on her journey, and literally opens her heart to Fran. I hope you remember that dead wheelchair nurse from the beginning of the game that I told you to, because here she is, genieing it up. The nurse tells Fran to take a number and wait in line, but Fran says she doesn't need any medical attention. She just wants to find her cat. The nurse says, too bad. Take a number. So Fran takes a number, which is 7. Not too bad, right? Fran goes into the waiting room filled with creatures that have been waiting months just to get their appointments. Now, obviously Fran can't wait this long due to the whole insolent tiny body thing, so she asks if she can go before everyone, since she's not sick and won't take too long. Number 2 says that he can't do that, as he doesn't even know what illness he has. Fran heads to the All-Seeing Eye to find out what illness number 2 has so that she can cure him and get his ticket. The eye tells Fran that the little weasel guy is suffering from a lack of agony, and to cure this, Fran has to fill a bottle with tears of genuine sorrow. Fran says that's light work for her since she's the Fran Bow. We then get a very creepy image of a living eyeball holding a bottle up to crying Fran while swiping her tears with a tentacle. Fran takes the bottle of agony to number 2, who guzzles him like your uncle who's way too old to be getting drunk every night, but still does. Number 2 tells Fran that he's feeling better now and gives her the ticket. She hands the ticket to the nurse, who tells her that she needs to make an appointment and hands her a business card with a number to call. Fran heads back into the skull room and uses the telephone to call the nurse and make an appointment. Then she heads back to the nurse, who grants her entry into the door marked 106. As she goes through the door, a ghost pops out, and Fran makes a joke about him being Palor, or Paler, however you're supposed to pronounce that. This game somehow expects me to believe that any 11-year-old would know what the word Palor is or what it means, and that even if they did, they would choose to use that word over pale. Once again, I would just like to remind you that I hate the writers. Anyway, Fran continues inside and is greeted by Vint, who hits her with the good old-fashioned KYS. But Fran counters with, "You're Remor, aren't you?" as if she doesn't already know who he is. He says that he hasn't been able to introduce himself properly because he can only be seen in the third reality for short periods of time, and hyped himself up a bit to Fran. Fran is having none of that bullshit and tells him not to act as if she doesn't know who he is, even though Fran was the one acting like she didn't know who he was literally 5 seconds ago. Then she asks a bunch of questions she already knows the answer to. He hits her with a bunch of cringe emo shit in response and says a very questionable line about being able to use her for whatever he wants. It is crazy to me that this game has made me so immune to these weird lines that I didn't even clock this line in the original script. Fran's like, no longer, and asks why it is that he killed her parents. He's like, bold of you to assume I would do such a thing, and he lunges at Fran. We get to see Fran committing the murder of her own parents, which would have been a revelation if they hadn't said that she did it earlier when Fran was talking to Gray. Fran's like, no, it can't be, and other expressions of disbelief for no reason considering she was told this before. Vin slides in and asks Fran who it is that killed her parents, and then hits her with some unrelated poetry before cutting to black. Fran wakes up back in the hallway she was in when she was talking to Vince, and heads down through the only open door at the end of the hallway. Through the door is a room with Doolittle strapped to an electric chair, a table with a red syringe, and Midnight, once again in a golden cage, because he just can't do that broke shit. Fran attempts to converse with the cat, but can no longer hear him, instead hearing what us normal sane people hear, which is just a cat meowing. Fran goes and takes the red syringe and stabs it in Doolittle to wake him up. Well, actually, she shocks him a little bit before stabbing him, but hey, who's watching anyway? There's some boring back and forth, but the only important part is Doolittle can barely see right now. I hope you remember the old dude from the paintings in the asylum, because Grace wheels him in. Old dude's like, I thought you restrained her. Grace is like, I did, but this bitch got magic or plot armor or some shit. Anyway, should I kill her? Fran's dumb as hell and only now figures out that Grace has been evil this whole time, asking her a billion questions in shock. The old dude is like, I am Dr. Oswald Harrison. You're a stalker. Nice to meet you. Fran's like, aren't you that dude from the photos in the asylum? He's like, yes, indeed I am. And Fran asks how he knows her aunt and mom. Long story short, they were important to his research in twins, and it is heavily implied that he told Remor to have her parents killed. Anyway, he asks Fran how she is so chilled about the whole parents being butchered by herself thing. Fran is like, I always knew it was Vince Offer who brutally murdered my parents, but what I don't know is why this dude is on my ass, bro. Old Oswald gives another bullshit explanation. Fran's like, alright, but why kill my parents? Dude, that's kind of, that's kind of rude of you to be honest. Old dude Oswald is like, they got in the way. And Grace chimes in with the, can we hurry this up, bro? I got appointments to get to. Fran begs for her and her cat's life once again. And this time, Grace seems a bit more receptive, saying, you know what, Fran? You're right. And takes her cat and walks off screen. Fran follows Grace and sees her holding the cat off of a ledge. Grace tells Fran that old dude Oswald just wants the best for her, and that even in the womb, he knew Fran was going to be a special girl. He didn't know just how right he was going to be for all of the wrong reasons. Grace continues on that Oswald told her mom and Grace to take good care of Fran, but Fran's mother tried to hide Fran away from the weird cult out of fear that they wanted to kill her, which clearly isn't true. Since the beginning of the game, we see that Grace got to hang out with Fran quite often, and even alone. Grace then tries to pitch the idea of allowing Oswald to experiment on her. Fran is like, if I say yes, then we'll all be good? Grace is like, yes, but unfortunately I still gotta kill the cat. He's a traitor, you know? And then drops that motherfucker off a cliff. Rip Midnight. You truly were one of the cats of all time. Fran gets sad and angry, so Grace is like, don't be a bitch now, bitch. We got shit to do. Fran's like, you killed my best friend and you killed my parents too, didn't you? I hate you. Fran then tries to strangle Grace with her tiny little baby hands, but gets fucking got by Jack Ruby. Oswald's like, I'll do the experiments while she's still warm, which, coming from an old man with a gun, sounds like he might have to be on a certain registry. Somehow Doolittle, who last I checked was still strapped to a chair, appears and is like, what did you do? Grace is like, Doolittle, homie G-man, look, this kid attacked me completely unprovoked, alright? As such, she had to be put down like the rabid wombat she is, or I guess was. He's like, okay then, at least let me tend to her wounds. Oswald, being the creeper he is, says, and I quote, no, she is mine now. I've been waiting for this moment for years. Listen, I'ma call a spade a spade. This man's a predator. Anyway, Itward fucking Iron Man's his way in and force blasts Oswald and Grace all the way to Narnia because there's only enough room for one child predator in this town. He then tells Fran that everything will be fine, and Doolittle's like, bro, what the fuck are you? Itward's like, I'm literally that guy, pal. Doolittle is still somehow shocked by seeing a non-human thing, as if he isn't literally in a floating building right now. Itward starts saying some hoodoo your voodoo shit, and then the fluffy doctor dude appears with Midnight in tow. Midnight should have broken all 4 of his ankles with a fall like that. I'm just saying. Anyway, Doolittle's being the only responsible person in the room and says, stay away from her, you freaks. But Appa keeps doctoring on, which, like, fair, because what is Doolittle gonna do with this big-ass fluffy axolotl that's floating in the sky? He is a god in comparison to you. Itward asks if Fluffy Boy Supremo can, quote, use the same body, which, like, weird, and Appa's like, I can do anything, because I am too him. Appa then says the magic words, and hey presto, Fran's alive again. Itward tells Fran that they have to go now, and Fran rubs it in Doolittle's face that she wasn't lying. Doolittle gets under the control of Matryoshka, and so Itward tells Fran that they have to leave. Fran's like, well, we gotta do something about this dude first. Appa says that he can make him think it was all a dream, but that will include Fran. Fran is like, cool with me as long as he's safe. And that, kids, is called Stockholm Syndrome. There's only one small problem with this plan. Inside Doolittle's car, there is still a file about Fran and her death, and the empty grave with a cat in place of Fran. So I'm not exactly sure how it is that he's going to think that Fran was all a dream, with the startling amount of evidence left in her wake that she did in fact exist. But who needs logic anyway? Instead, let's go back and finish out this game the proper way. Appa says, that was very country roads of you, Fran, and does the magic boogaloo on Doolittle. Itward hits Fran with the Miss Frizzle, and they ride off into the Veggieland sunset. Fran and Midnight on Appa, and Itward on his own in his own flying contraption. The end. For real this time. Well, that's all for Fran Bow. See you on the next adventure. Nostalgia, drug-fueled or otherwise. And remember, kids, do drugs, dig graves, and enter weird vehicles with weird men.